I've set myself an arduous task. In this video, I want to rank what I believe to be the top 10 most shocking plot twists in all of Bleach. Over the course of the canon manga, Kubo dropped several mind-blowing and shocking twists, events that forever altered the course of the story and transformed the world we thought we knew so well. These are the series' craziest moments, moments that stayed with fans like you and I for years after we first read them, so narrowing it down to just 10 was pretty difficult, but overall I'm quite happy with the list we've got. Before we get started, guys, if you haven't hit subscribe yet, make sure to do that now for more Bleach content just like this every single week. And if you enjoyed the video, make sure to give it a thumbs up as well, as it does help support me and the channel by getting us more exposure on the whole YouTube algorithm. And if you really enjoy what I do here, I do have a Patreon for this channel as well. If you wanted to take your support another step further, you absolutely don't have to do that, but if you did, you can get videos like this one early, and you can support me over there for as little as $1 a month. Everyone appearing on screen is a patron of this channel currently. I really well and truly appreciate your support. Thank you guys so much for letting me do what I love. So like I said, getting this list down to just a firm 10 was pretty difficult. There are so many twists and turns within the story of Bleach, so if I've missed any that you think should have been on here, or if your list just looks different to mine, please do let me know in the comments below. I'd love to see which were the most shocking plot twists for you guys. But because I had such a tough time getting this down to just 10, before we get started, there are 3 honourable mentions I want to discuss before moving into that numbered list. And of course, one piece of housekeeping, there will be major spoilers in this video for just about all of the biggest plot twists in Bleach, so if you don't want the series spoiled for you, if you haven't reached the end, you have been warned. So our first honourable mention then is perhaps the most recent plot twist on this list, and it comes from the relatively new Hell chapter we just got, and that's the shocking revelation that all of the captains who have died in the series so far have actually been going to Hell this whole time. This completely upends what we thought we knew about the cycle of rebirth in Bleach, which, with a story set in the afterlife predominantly, is a pretty big deal, as we thought that deceased Shinigami simply got reincarnated in the human world as a brand new person. But no, all of the captain level Shinigami so far have been doomed to spend out the rest of their days as a denizen of Hell. And what makes this twist even crazier is that it's their own comrades who have been inadvertently sending them there. This is a massive deal. The reason it's only an honourable mention is because really this is just a concept so far. There's been no expansion on this idea, and unfortunately we have no idea if there ever will be. However, if Kubo does deign to continue his Hell arc in the future, this twist could move up with the major ramifications it has for the Bleach universe. Our second honourable mention is a shocking revelation from the Arrancar arc, when it's revealed that Nell, the wacky comic relief child who's been clinging on to Ichigo all this time, is actually not just the cutesy character she appears to be, but is in actuality the former third Espada, meaning she was once a high-ranking official of Aizen's army. This was a really awesome moment for Nell in general, as it really helped to flesh her out, add an entirely new dynamic to this character, who I thought was honestly pretty played out by the time we got this reveal. I thought she was mostly just there to be this ultra hyper-exaggerated comic relief character, who also helped to lend Ichigo a little bit of humanity during his descent into Hueco Mundo. But this really transformed the character and has affected her throughout the rest of her tenure in Bleach as well. So I think it's a really cool twist that just adds an entirely new dynamic to someone we thought we knew. Our final honourable mention is also involving a member of the Espada, and this is a twist I've talked about on this channel before as one I personally do really like, and that's the reveal that Ulquiorra wasn't the first Espada, not even the second or the third, but in actuality was only the 4th Espada all along. This is devastating in its simplicity and its effectiveness. Kubo is playing with expectations here. Ulquiorra has been built up all this time to appear on the surface to probably be the leader of the Espadas. He has Aizen's favour, Aizen lets him carry out missions at his behest. Ichigo uses everything he has to bring this guy down, and it barely scratches him, only for Ulquiorra to reveal crushingly he's only the 4th Espada in terms of strength, meaning that no matter what Ichigo does, even if he scraped a victory here, there would still be 3 Espada more powerful than Ulquiorra. Obviously, the point of this was to make the Espada seem like a completely insurmountable enemy, a summit Ichigo would never reach. Now, of course, whether or not the first 3 Espada actually lived up to expectations is always up for debate, but this twist will never not be effective. And that brings us then to our top 10, our list of what I believe to be the most shocking plot twists in all of Bleach. As I said, let me know in the comments below your list, I'd love to see it. But at number 10, this is a difficult one for me. I was considering actually only making this an honourable mention, and the reason being, although this is a pretty big and earth-shattering moment, the climax of a character arc, and I think people, generally speaking, would have this twist lower down on their list, for me, it loses points for being, I think, pretty obvious. I thought it was coming a mile away. And that is the moment, of course, where Gin betrays Aizen. Right at the end of the Fake Karakura Town arc, in the Deicide mini-arc, as Aizen edges closer to completing his ultimate goal, Gin suddenly turns on him, his right-hand man. He turns literally and stabs him through the heart with his Bankai Kamishini no Yari, as the conclusion to a centuries-long plan for revenge against Aizen. It's a cool moment, an awesome twist that was so much fun to read as well. But again, I think many people saw it coming. There's the obvious fact that it really feels like Gin is helping Ichigo, helping him kind of understand the situation and trying to get him to dig deeper to find the power necessary to defeat Aizen back in the Fake Karakura Town. But there's the fact that these two, despite seemingly understanding each other on a level more than anyone else could, they've always had that air of suspicion about them. Gin is an inherently very suspicious character. So for me, I just kind of always saw this coming, but it didn't really diminish the impact of the twist when it happened, which is why it managed to make number 10 on here. If you've got it lower down, I wouldn't be surprised, but for me, this feels like the right spot. And coming in at number 9 is another plot twist that, while shocking, I think was quite heavily telegraphed, and I think a lot of people would consider this to be another one that was fairly obvious. But again, I think it was very effective. And that's the reveal that Ginjo Kugo was in fact evil and the main villain of the Lost Agent arc. This is a weird one, because I think Kubo does it really, really well. From the offset, it looks like Ginjo is a bad guy. He's portrayed as being ultra suspicious, very shady, almost comically evil in the way he kind of comes across to Ichigo. And then slowly, but surely, over the course of the arc, Ginjo, the walls around him seem to come down, Ichigo lets him in a bit more, and they seem to become firm allies, maybe even friends. And I think Kubo was very, very smart with this character. Very, very savvy. Very genre savvy in that he makes us think that Ginjo is a good guy, and then plays with the expectation that his audience clearly thought Ginjo was still evil, giving us this whole fake spiel about Ginjo being a bad guy, pretending to be evil, and then, in actuality, supposedly cementing himself as a good guy, only to much later on reveal that no, it was all fake, Ginjo is actually evil, and the first substitute Shinigami. Like I said, maybe for some people this wasn't a twist because maybe they never stopped doubting Ginjo, but I just think it was done so very well, and that panel, that twist of his actual reveal is so effective. So for me, I'm happy to have this moment at number 9. Okay, so at number 8, I think we have something of a controversial plot twist, although in my opinion no less shocking than the rest. And that's the reveal that Yami Largo is in actuality the 0 Espada, not the 10th Espada as we've been led to believe all this time. What, didn't you know that this video was actually going from 0 to 9 rather than 10 to 1? It is dumb, it is stupid, but I said most shocking plot twists, not the best plot twists. I don't think this one is particularly very good. In fact, you know my opinion of this plot twist. I made an entire video about why I think it doesn't really work. But it is shocking nonetheless. I don't think anybody expected this kind of glow up, I guess, from Yami, of all characters, who up until this point had just been a total buffoon who existed only really to be a punching bag for basically everyone he came across. Now, the reason I don't think this really works, I'm not going to go into super detail about it, but Yami just doesn't really earn this position. A coveted position, by the way, that the fanbase had been theorizing about for years, whether or not there was actually a 0 Espada or not. Yami was very unpopular just in general, considered to be a bit of a letdown overall, and just a really kind of weak character who didn't earn that twist or that position. But it was still shocking nonetheless. I was personally shocked, mostly the fact that the fans' idea of a Zero Espada even existed at all. But the idea of this twist has been pretty brutally lambasted among fans ever since. The whole "didn't you know the Espada actually went from 0 to 9 rather than 1 to 10 was really, really dumb, and people didn't like it. But it was a shocking moment nonetheless, so I think it earns its spot on the list. Coming in at number 7 is a twist I really enjoy, and it was very shocking for me, to the point where I remember audibly gasping when I turned the page and saw this. And that is the fact that Komamura has a human form in the Thousand Year Blood War arc. Now, it's already a bit of a twist that when Komamura first loses his helmet in the Soul Society arc, he's actually a freaking wolf fox man underneath. But of course, we grew to know and love Komamura over the years that would follow. However, in the Thousand Year Blood War arc, after he undergoes some very interesting training with an elder of his clan, he returns to the battlefield with another helmet over his face, and I should have known something was up at that point. I should have been I just thought it was a callback to the Soul Society arc, because Kubo had been doing that quite liberally in the final arc as it was. But when the helmet is destroyed and you turn the page and Komamura is now a human, I was shocked. I couldn't believe it. And like I said, maybe I should have seen it coming. There is a small hint where you see Komamura's hand, and the smoke is just sort of clearing on it, and it doesn't look the same as it used to. But this moment blew my mind, and I love it, and I still have, as I say, to this day, think Komamura has the best story out of everyone who lost their Bankai, and this is the ultimate culmination of that. The results of Komamura's barbaric humanification technique, which, involves the tearing out of his own heart. This transformation was just so cool, took me completely by surprise, really caught me off guard, and I think it's one of the most shocking plot twists in all of Bleach. Rounding out the top half of this list with plot twist number 6 is an interesting one again, and one that I think just really came out of absolutely nowhere, which I think are often the most effective plot twists of all. And that is the reveal that when Araniero Ararueri, the 9th Espada, removed his mask, he was Kaien Shiba underneath. I mean, this is just enormous. Now, we've actually talked about Kaien relatively recently in our video on Kukaku Shiba, but his entire relationship with Rukia is her emotional core, the crux of that character, and it all seemed to be quite neatly tied up with a bow at the end of the Soul Society arc, when the Shiba family kind of accepts Rukia's apology and, they say that she wasn't to blame anyway. However, Kubo, being the devil that he is, wasn't ready to let Rukia off the hook quite so easily, and the reveal that the 9th Espada was in actuality her former commanding officer was absolutely crazy. It was just an insane moment that was only compounded as the fight went on. Sure, this wasn't exactly Kaien that she was fighting. It was kind of an eldritch abomination using Kaien's face. However, the twist only evolved the further into the fight we got, when it was actually revealed that, yes, this is literally Kaien's spirit body. Araniero devoured Metastasia when it returned to Waco Mundo, and took with it all of its memories, including the body it took from Kaien, meaning Rukia was actually fighting her former commanding officer in this fight. It's an emotional gut punch, a seismic gut punch, and it's handled really, really well, and basically transformed what could have been just another generic Espada fight into one of the most emotional battles in the Arrancar arc. And so, kicking off the top 5 of our list is a plot twist that is pretty shocking, and I think has been foreshadowed for years up until this point, which I think is very impressive. And that's the reveal that Ichigo's mother, Masaki Kurosaki, is in actuality a Quincy all along, not just a regular human. This is a great twist. As I mentioned already, it has seemingly been foreshadowed for ages by Ichigo having Quincy cross bedding, which maybe implied some kind of Quincy lineage or heritage within his family, which is pretty cool to think about. But what I like most about this plot twist is it adds another dynamic to Ichigo's mysterious mother, who was deceased since before this story began, so we never really got to find out much about her, and it seemed like she was maybe just the normal one of Ichigo's parents, whereas Ichigo's father was a Shinigami all along. But no, this means that they were both interesting spiritual beings. Their coming together has a lot more weight to it, with them being on opposite sides of the spiritual spectrum, essentially. These two races never really supposed to come together, never really supposed to interact. It adds additional legitimacy and weight to basically the entire flashback as a whole and the entire relationship these two had, and the fact that Ichigo is a perfect hybrid of all four races of Bleach. Overall, I think this plot twist is just handled really well. Everything but the rain in general is full of these kind of reveals and twists. The fact that Isshin was a Shiba, Masaki was actually adopted by the Ishida family, and was supposed to marry Ryuken, but overall, this one about Masaki being a Quincy is the pivotal twist that kind of ties it all together. And I think it works really, really well. Some people think it's a little contrived that Ichigo has to have the powers of every single race, but that's where I think this plot twist comes into making it all make sense and adding legitimacy to the whole thing. So I really do like it on the whole. Coming in at number 4 on our list of the most shocking Bleach plot twists is one that I absolutely love, and I remember the fanbase just completely losing their minds when this was revealed for the first time. It was a huge moment that forever altered not only this character, but basically our perception of the history of Soul Society. And that's the reveal that the kindly medical healer captain Retsu Unohana was in fact the first ever Kenpachi, the bloodthirsty Yachiru Unohana, and the very first captain of the 11th Division 1,000 years ago. This is monumental, and this has been foreshadowed ever so slightly with people being terrified of Unohana, but we just didn't know why, and Kenpachi even mentioning that he named Yachiru after the only person he admires. And that's why I think this twist is so popular and so effective, because it all kind of coalesces really nicely, and just it all makes an awful lot of sense. Adding this new layer to Unohana is fantastic. The fact that she is the one who created the tradition of Kenpachi in the first place is so wonderful. And I remember people thinking it was a little bit jarring because her characterization as Yachiru was so wholly different from how she had been from the rest of the story. But I liked it. I liked this kind of uncorking of her true nature, her true personality. Her role in the Thousand Year Blood War arc might be divisive, might even be a little disappointing, the fact that she's killed off the moment she really becomes interesting, but this actual twist, this reveal, is one of Bleach's finest, and absolutely one of the most shocking in the series, to think that this kindly, matronly old woman was actually just this bloodthirsty criminal, but also, more importantly, the founder of what would become an absolute staple tradition of Soul Society, the title of Kenpachi, was earth-shattering for many people, and it just worked so well. It was so awesome to see Unohana transformed like that, involved in the story like that, and I'll never forget it. It was just such a crazy moment, seeing her enter the Central 46 behind Kyoraku, shrouded in darkness. It was obviously a massive moment, and I think it was pulled off perfectly. We're into the top 3 now, and I think all 3 of these twists are massive, monumental, mind-blowing twists that forever altered at least something to do with the world of Bleach. Whether it was the perception of a character, whether it was the plot of Bleach, these are all huge, shocking plot twists. Number 3 is, and it was really difficult to rank these. To be honest, I always had number 1 in my head. I kind of knew what that was going to be. But any of these could probably take the cake. Number 3 is a crazy one, and that is the reveal that Ichigo's dad, Isshin, was a Shinigami all along. And that's just that's crazy. It's so good, it's so effective, because Ichigo's dad, up until this point, has just been seen as that bumbling comic relief moron who is completely over the top, seems totally dedicated to his kids. He's not particularly cool, he's not particularly suave, he's just an idiot. And that is played up for a decent amount of time, which is why I think this is so effective. Isshin plays that role for all of the Agent of the Shinigami arc. That's our first impression of that character, and then he is that role as well for the Soul Society arc beginning and end. But through the Soul Society arc, we had a chance to meet Shinigami, we've had a chance to meet historical characters like Kisuke and Yoruichi, And to kickstart the Urankar arc with the reveal that Ichigo's dumb old dad, as Kon calls him, was actually a Shinigami, but not only that, has the tattered remains of a captain's Haori on his shoulders, was enormous, and the amount of questions that it posed were crazy. How could he have a human family? How could he, father children as a Shinigami? What squad was he the captain of? When was he in the Soul Society? Why did he leave the Soul Society? What happened to his powers? Just with this reveal, Kubo opened a veritable Pandora's box of intrigue, and that's why it was so exciting. It was so exciting, so shocking to see this reveal. He's right there. It's Ichigo's dad, but he's wearing a Shinigami Shihakusho. He has a Zanpakuto. He one-shots Grand Fisher. It was just an insane moment that totally changed this character. But then by adding onto him a dynamic with characters like Kisuke Urahara, it really opens up so many questions about his history and the role he plays in the larger universe of Bleach. So for me, this twist will forever... And this is another one of these twists where it's become so ubiquitous, it's become so well known that I feel like really any new readers to Bleach would already know this, and that's a big shame. But for me, I remember seeing it and just being like, what? Like, I couldn't believe it. And so it absolutely deserves its spot at number 3. Now, in my opinion, the second most shocking plot twist on this list is, again, maybe a controversial one. I'm not entirely sure, actually, where people stand with this one, because it forever alters one of the core dynamics and relationships of our entire series, revolving around our main character, which you would feel is sacred ground that you, as a writer, might not want to mess with too much. But Kubo goes there, and he forever changes the perception of this character moving forwards. And that is the big reveal that Zangetsu is Yhwach. And those 3 words forever changed Ichigo. They changed the dynamic he had with the person he thought he knew the best. In many ways, it was the ultimate betrayal, but it wasn't quite framed like that. So basically, Ichigo's Zanpakuto up until that point in the story was Zangetsu, Old Man Zangetsu, who was supposed to be his closest partner, his closest confidant, someone who Ichigo could speak with in his inner world. You have the very emotional loss of Zangetsu with the final Getsuga Tensho. All of these moments are built on a foundation of trust, Zangetsu wanting to protect Ichigo, Ichigo wanting to work better with him. The relationship between a Shinigami and their Zanpakuto spirit should be the most personal thing in Bleach, the most personal, deepest connection ever. And then we find out in the 1,000-Year Blood War arc that Ichigo's has been built on a lie. Now, it's not a literal lie, but it feels like that, and it feels like it to Ichigo as well. When the 1,000-Year Blood War arc began and we were first introduced to the villainous Yhwach arc, many people pointed out, apparently to Kubo's detriment, that Yhwach arc was just a carbon copy of Zangetsu. Looking a little bit different, but people clamoured that Kubo had run out of character designs, and that he would have the audacity to design his final villain in basically the exact same way as Zangetsu. Well, lo and behold, Kubo, that was his plan all along, because it's basically revealed that Old Man Zangetsu inside of Ichigo's soul is actually a remnant of Yhwach himself, and is actually the core of Ichigo's Quincy powers, not his Zanpakuto, as we had been led to believe this entire time. If that's not an earth-shattering revelation, I don't know what is. And it turns out that Hollow Ichigo, quote-unquote Hollow Ichigo, who we had known as that all this time, was actually Zangetsu's Zanpakuto spirit all along. And what's crazy about this, of course, is that when I say it's built on a lie, but not really a lie, that's because neither of them really ever lied to Ichigo. Hollow Ichigo literally says, "I am Zangetsu," over and over again during their clash in the Urankar arc, but you never quite believe it because he comes across as this antagonistic force. But I like that the weight this is given is obviously monumental. The moment Zangetsu, in quotation marks, says that, no, I'm not Zangetsu, you see one of the buildings they're on just break in half as Ichigo's world, metaphorically, is just being destroyed around him, torn down around him. And Ichigo has all the questions that the audience have. He's like, are you really you, Hobart? Who are you? Can I trust you? Are you a friend? Are you my friend or are you my enemy? In the end, I think this twist is very effective. You know, obviously insanely shocking, but I think it is hand-waved away a little bit, which does disappoint me somewhat. There aren't really any ramifications to what should be an enormous gut punch. It's effective in the moment, but Ichigo very quickly just kind of forgives them all. He's like, you know, I don't think you were ever trying to lie to me. Can I still call you Zangetsu? Is that all right with you? And basically the next time he faces off against Yhwach, he doesn't even really mention it. He just says, I know that you're the root of my Quincy blood, so what? And I think that's a little bit disappointing. But in the moment, this twist was completely just groundbreaking. You know, I couldn't believe it. Again, and I know I said that with basically the last two twists, but this was another one where it was just so difficult to comprehend. Just the upending of the series' core dynamic. And I think it was a ballsy move by Kubo. And in the end, I think it all made sense, which is the most crucial part of a twist like this. But for me, there could have ever only been one twist to take the number one spot. The most shocking plot twist of them all in Bleach is unrivaled, in my opinion. And it actually is the plot twist that hooked me onto the series forever. Made me totally fall in love with a series that I was enjoying. I really, really liked it, but this reveal cemented it as something that I would continue with moving forwards. And that, of course, is the monumental, mind-blowing, shocking plot twist that Sosuke Aizen was not only alive all the time, but actually the main villain of the series. And you know, this is another twist, much like Isshin being a Shinigami, where Aizen is so famous now as being one of the most famous anime manga villains of all time, that I think you'd have a very tough time starting this series and not already knowing he was a bad guy, which is a bit of a shame, because that impact is probably lessened. But for someone like me who had no idea, I was shook. I was totally shook. The Soul Society arc is phenomenally well written, meticulously crafted, and you are supposed to think that Gin Ichimaru is the main bad guy, outside of Byakuya, acting as an antagonistic force. To discover, however, that Gin was working for Aizen this whole time, that his gruesome death was faked, that his Zanpakuto Kyoka Suigetsu allows him to create perfect illusions, was absolutely crazy. And then to add on that, Aizen then just goes on some rampage, taking out Momo, taking out Hitsugaya, going to the Sokyoku Hill, taking out Renji, Komamura, Ichigo, discovering that he was massively powerful, discovering as well that Tosen worked for him. I mean, this twist sets up the next, 5 years of Bleach, basically. It sets up the entire Arrancar arc, which is the longest, potentially most impactful arc of Bleach on the franchise as a whole. It sets up Aizen as one of the most famous anime villains of all time. I will never forget this moment. It's handled so well when he reveals himself to Hinamori, who is, the most tender character to him, the closest character to Aizen emotionally. And he's like, oh, I'm so sorry, you poor thing, you've lost weight, you must have been so upset. Our time together was a joy to me, as he embraces her. And then he suddenly says goodbye, and he stabs her through the chest. And you get this amazing sequence of panels where she looks down at his bloodied hand. She looks up at him, and you no longer see the warm smile of Captain Aizen. You see this cold, indifferent, villainous look. It's so good. And that's followed up with him saying, let's go, Gin. And he says, yes, Captain Aizen. And then you get this amazing panel that is one of my favourite panels of Aizen in the entire series, when you realise that this guy is a nasty piece of work. As he's walking away, he's looking down, and I think you're supposed to think that he's sad about what he's just done to Hinamori. But then he lifts his head and he has just the most evil grin, and I was like, what is going on? I remember thinking, I just couldn't believe it. It was so crazy to me that the kindly Captain Aizen, who is killed apparently in a gruesome fashion, was a mastermind, evil, Machiavellian villain who just takes pleasure in decimating his former comrades. It was just so good. And of course, you know, I'm blathering. Its importance can't be overstated. It is probably the most shocking twist in all of Bleach. But for me, on a very personal level, like I said, it cemented my love for the series moving forwards. That's it for my video on what I believe to be the top 10 most shocking plot twists in all of Bleach. What do you think? Do you agree with me? Let me know in the comments below. I'd love to hear what you think are some of the most shocking twists as well. I'm well aware there were some I left off here. Things like Yoruichi's true form, for instance, the revelation that Kisuke was actually a captain. You know, there's all of these sorts of things that I just didn't think quite made the cut. But if you disagreed, let me know in the comments below. Make sure to hit subscribe, guys, if you haven't done already. And until next time, I'll catch you later. And I'll see you then.